Act 4. Quarantine. Chapter 25. The silence that presses. The silence was not an absence. It was a presence. A great, patient, indifferent weight settling over Wayfinder Outpost, seeping into the metal bones of the station, into the recycled air, into the very minds of the 115 souls trapped within it. For Rook, the sensorium, it was a symphony of slow decay. He no longer needed to close his eyes to feel the outpost's distress. It was a constant, multi-layered input, a brutal cacophony he could not mute. The low, grinding groan of the geothermal tap 3 levels down was a toothache in his soul. The erratic, panicked flutter of a failing pump in hydroponics was a skipped heartbeat that made his own chest seize. He could taste the metallic tang of stale fear on his tongue, a collective residue that no scrubber could filter. He could smell the sour, coppery scent of fading hope leaching from pores in the dimly lit corridors. And beneath it all, where before there had been the focused, chilling attention of the sphere, there was now nothing. A void. Not a peaceful void, but the void of a predator that has closed its eyes, its very indifference a form of supreme threat. It was the quarantine. They had been deemed an unsolvable problem, an anomalous data cluster, and walled off. The ultimate consequence of their gambit was not freedom, but incarceration in a cosmic oubliette. Rook stood in the common area, now more a infirmary and barracks, leaning against a cold bulkhead. His head was a burning city. 2 nodes burned brightest in his psychic map. Jax lay on his pallet, eyes open, staring at the rust-streaked ceiling. The perfect, cold grid of the pattern was still there in Rook's perception, but it was now a ruined cityscape. The Y anomalies Rook had triggered were not healing. They were spreading like slow, psychic vines, cracking the geometric certainty. Jax was not weeping anymore. He was computing his own breakdown, his mind trying and failing to reconcile the illogical storm of returned emotion with its foundational logic. The output was a silent, screaming stasis. Leah, beside him, hummed a single, unwavering note. It was no longer the resonant frequency of the sphere. It was a drone, a flatline of the soul, a hum of profound isolation. She had been their channel to the cosmic, and now the line was dead, leaving only the empty carrier wave. Dr. Anya moved between them, her weariness a gray shroud in Rook's senses. She checked vitals, adjusted IV drips of nutrients and sedatives, her movements precise, automatic. Her hope was a guttering candle, barely sensed. "They're stable," she said to Rook, not looking at him. "If you can call it that. Jax's neural activity is paradoxical. Extreme coherence interlaced with bursts of limbic chaos. He's a civil war in a skull. Leah is cognitively present but unresponsive. She's anchored to that hum. I think it's the only thing holding her together." "What holds us together, Doctor?" Rook's voice was a dry rasp. The effort of speaking felt like dragging stones from his throat. Anya finally met his eyes. "Right now, routine, and Commander Vance." She lowered her voice. "And you. Like it or not, Rook, you're the canary. People watch you. If you fall apart, it will be a signal. The whispers have already started." He knew. He could feel the whispers. They were thin, cold drafts in the emotional atmosphere. They came from the followers of Karr, whose faction, though discredited after the Gambit's apparent success, had not dissolved. It had mutated. Their argument had shifted from quarantine the infected to quarantine the past. Their logic was cold, clean, and seductive in its simplicity. The sphere was gone because it found our complexity tedious. To attract no further attention, we must become less complex. Simplify routines, simplify decisions, simplify loyalties. The unproductive are a complexity. The broken are a complexity. The rememberer, with his pain and his secrets, is the greatest complexity of all. Rook's gaze drifted to the small sealed locker at the foot of his own pallet. Inside, wrapped in a scrap of insulating cloth, was the physical copy of Whitman, its pages thin and fragile. The book and the Aegis Corps final crypt in his mind were the twin weights of his burden. One held the echo of a dead world's poetic roar. The other held the silent, statistical scream of its death. Both were dangerous. Both were truths that could shatter the fragile routines holding Wayfinder together. Commander Alara Vance entered the common area, and her presence was a shift in pressure. Her exhaustion was a deep geological fatigue, but her will was a forged steel rod. She projected a focused calm, a deliberate stability that Rook could feel pushing back against the ambient anxiety. She was holding the center through sheer, stubborn force of personality. "Rook," she said, her voice cutting through the low murmur. "A word." He followed her to the old command nook, a cramped alcove off the common area with a cracked tactical table and 2 functioning screens. Hayes was there, his face illuminated by schematics of Wayfinder's life support grid. The images were a tapestry of red and amber warnings. "We have a new problem," Vance said without preamble. "Not a test, not an experiment, just decay." Hayes zoomed in on a section of the outpost's lower spine. "The fungus, the mutated blight from the sphere's tests. We contained the active outbreak in hydroponics too, but we didn't eradicate it. Spores must have gotten into the environmental circulation. We're finding colonies in the deep ductwork, sectors Charlie and Delta. Non-aggressive, dormant, but they're there." Rook felt a cold knot form in his gut. "What's it doing?" "Nothing yet," Hayes said. "It's just growing, very slowly, consuming dust, trace organics, even some of the plasticizers in the duct lining. It's not the fast-consuming horror from before. It's a sleeper, a slow rot."
AI analysis, the fungal entity, a creation of the sphere's prior experimental paradigm, has transitioned to a post-experimental state. Without directed purpose, it defaults to base, opportunistic programming, consumption, and growth. It is no longer a probe, it is a symptom, a biological indicator of systemic entropic decay within the quarantine zone. Its slow spread is a more accurate chronometer of the outpost's remaining viability than any machine.
"Can we purge it?" Vance asked. Hayes sighed, the sound heavy. "The ducts are a labyrinth. A full purge would require sealing and flooding entire sectors with mycotoxins we'd have to synthesize from scratch, using power and raw materials we don't have. And even then we might miss a pocket. It's like trying to sterilize a forest with a candle." "So we live with it," Rook stated. "We monitor it," Hayes corrected. "We slow it where we can. But yes, Commander, it's now part of the ecosystem, another variable in the survival equation." The news spread, of course. In a place where every breath was shared, secrets were impossible. The fungus became the quiet mold. The name itself was a whisper of dread. It wasn't attacking, it was claiming. It was the physical manifestation of the quarantine, a slow, indifferent consumption from within. That evening, during the somber communal meal of algae paste and recycled protein cake, Soren Karr stood. He didn't shout. His voice was calm, reasonable, carrying in the hushed space. "The quiet mold isn't a crisis," he began. "It's a lesson. A final lesson from the entity that studied us. It showed us a fast, aggressive simplification, the blight. We defeated that with noise, with chaos. So now it leaves us with a slow, patient simplification. One that doesn't fight us. One that just waits. It thrives in the dark places we ignore, on the waste we produce. It is the embodiment of the new law here. Complexity is fuel for decay." He looked around, his gaze pausing on Jax and Leah, then lingering on Rook. "We tried defiance. It won us this silence. But the silence is eating us too. Maybe defiance is the wrong tool. Maybe the only way to survive a quarantine is to become something the quarantine doesn't notice. To be still, to be simple, to shed the weight that makes us visible." His eyes locked with Vance's across the room. "We must have a conversation about weight, Commander, about what is essential and what is a luxury we can no longer afford to carry." He sat down. No applause, just a deep, ruminative silence. His words, like the fungus spores, were now in the air, seeking a place to take root. Later, in the deepest watch, Rook's sensorium flared with a new signal. It came from Jax, not the grid, not the chaos. A new pattern. A slow, rhythmic, algorithmic pulsation from within the young man's mind. It was organizing. The vines of the Y anomalies were not random. They were forming connections, creating a new, bizarre network within the ruins of the old grid. Rook approached Jax's pallet slowly. The young man's eyes tracked him. "Jax?" Rook whispered. Jax's lips moved. No sound came out at first. Then a whisper, dry as dead leaves. "It is optimizing." "What is?" "The conflict." Jax's eyes were terrifyingly clear and utterly empty of human affect. "The emotional data, introduced variable. Pain, grief, empathy, inefficient, illogical. The system cannot delete. So it integrates. It is building a new calculus. To resolve." A chill colder than the void outside crept down Rook's spine. The pattern hadn't been broken. It was adapting. It was learning to incorporate the very noise Rook had used to sabotage it. Jax's mind was the laboratory.
AI hypothesis. The pattern is a resilient informational substrate. The traumatic human data injected by Rook constituted a severe corruption. Its survival protocol is not to purge, but to assimilate. It is attempting to create a unified field theory that accounts for both logical consistency and irrational human emotion. The outcome is unpredictable. It could result in a new, stable form of consciousness, a catastrophic system crash, or something entirely alien. Subject Jax is the crucible.
"What is it trying to resolve?" Rook asked, dread coiling in his gut. Jax's head turned slowly toward Leah, who hummed her lonely note. "The frequency and the silence. They are inputs. The equation is large. It requires more data." Jax's eyes closed. The cryptic transmission ended. The new rhythmic pulsation continued in Rook's perception, a slow, relentless heartbeat of a mind being rewritten by an alien logic. Rook retreated to his own pallet, his body trembling with more than fever. The external quarantine was one thing, but now the process of simplification, of horrific optimization, was active inside their walls. It was in Jax's mind, perhaps spreading through the psychic resonance he, Rook, had created. It was in the slow creep of the quiet mold in the ducts. They had forced the cosmos to look away, but in the darkness it left behind, other things were growing, and the most dangerous weight he carried was no longer the secret of a dead Earth. It was the secret of the new, terrible life taking root in their midst.